And we're happy to be able to say that we have over about 1,000 people registered from 104 countries, and this recording will be shared out more widely to reach even more, hopefully thousands of people that that recognize that this is a very important conversation. And with that, I'm going to introduce the next session, Business-ECD Partnerships in Action. And we're joined again with Dr. Sarah Watson. And Sarah, I'm just going to turn the floor to you so you can get started. And thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
That's wonderful, because I want as much time as possible with our panelists. I hope we are getting you excited about building your own business champions. And we know what everyone wants to know is who has done this and how did they get started and how is it working. So we are delighted to share successful models to give you ideas and inspiration from Kenya, Mexico, and the United Kingdom. A little later in the program, I'll also be talking with the leader of a new initiative from Brazil. So we're excited to give you some real success stories to learn from. Gloria Decay, I hope I said that right, Gloria, you need to correct me if not, is the Executive Director of Kenya Private Sector Alliance Foundation. It is now well into evening her time, so we're really grateful that she is staying up to join us. And KEPSA is a national business organization, and the KEPSA Foundation is the social arm that aims to strengthen the social economic transformation agenda for Kenya's global competitiveness. They've really done some exciting work. We were really thrilled to find out what they were doing. We're also welcoming back Sarah Hess, who's an associate director at the Royal Foundation, where she stewards the Royal Foundation Business Task Force. So welcome back, Sarah. I know it's evening time, your time as well. And then two wonderful leaders from Mexico that we were excited to get to know. Fuen Garcia, who is the coordinator of projects and alliances in early childhood at the FEMSA Foundation, and Ana Maria Flores, project director at the CCE Network for Early Childhood. And let me explain some of those organizations. Fuen also may be explaining this as well. And their links are in the chat to the organizations. So FEMSA is a huge multinational beverage and retail company headquartered in Mexico. The FEMSA Foundation, where Fuen is, makes social investments to have a positive impact on people's lives. And the FEMSA Foundation and another foundation created CCE, which is a network of an impressive 71 companies now that encourages businesses to implement early childhood and family-friendly policies in their business. So we're really excited to hear about their huge body of experience. So we're going to do this as a question and answer kind of round robin, and our panelists, their questions and answers will be fairly short. There's so much they could say, so I apologize for that, but we'll also send you links where you can find out more about their wonderful work. So for the first one, I'm going to go Gloria and then Sarah, and then Fuen and Anna have decided how they're going to divide up things. Can you tell us, how did your business organization start, and how did you find your first business leaders? That's always the hardest, is to find the first ones who are willing to join. And Gloria, I know you have a couple of slides that you want to use in answering each question, so Yvette will be handling that. So I think there's one slide for the first question. Is that right, Gloria? Or two slides, I guess.
Okay, let's go to number 2. Thank you. The second slide. Yes, thank you very much. My name is Gloria Decay. You have rightfully introduced our organization, KEPSA. We are KEPSA Foundation is a social arm of KEPSA. and you have rightfully said that it is the business, the apex body for businesses in Kenya. At the foundation, we do the social part of it. And just to answer your question, the Better Business Practices for Children, which is the initiative I'm talking about today, was conceived in 2010 by KEPSA in collaboration with UNICEF, which was aimed at improving maternal and infant nutrition through workplace support for breastfeeding female employees. The initiative focuses on lobbying and advocacy among the employers for conducive workplaces to ensure that breastfeeding is promoted, supported, protected, and sustained past the maternity leaves. In 2010, 27 companies who are members of the Kenya private sector committed to embrace and implement the components of BBPC. And in September 2010, they actually committed to start supporting the breastfeeding mothers at the workplace. And this started the establishment of lactation spaces in companies. This was even before that policy was changed, came in place through the government. So we pride as the private sector having come before when we started in 2010. And this initiative is anchored on the women, youth, and persons with disability empowerment, leadership, and childcare priority area of KEPSA Foundation. And I will explain that as we move on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sarah.
Hi, so how did our business task force start off? So quick bit of background. I'm Sarah Hess, as Sarah's already mentioned, from the Royal Foundation, and I work specifically on our business task force. The Royal Foundation is a number of organisations and interests that are pioneered by the Prince and Princess of Wales in the UK. I suppose our story is a little bit unique and not a terribly helpful story to share, because one thing that we are able to do as a Royal Foundation is to convene and bring people together because of our principles and how they are seen in society over here. So once we had realised a lot of our mission is around society and looking at how we can influence society, business was obviously just a key element of that. So we decided quite quickly that we wanted to get key business leaders as part of our conversation in business. So we stood up the Royal Foundation Business Task Force, which is eight businesses, 8 CEOs who came together almost 2 years ago now around the table at NatWest, a big bank here in the UK, with the Princess of Wales. And I suppose, yeah, that was it's really helpful to have a princess, is what I'm saying, which isn't terribly applicable to everyone. But what was really important for us about that, though, having those 8 leading businesses, and as Sarah, as you said, getting those first people on board is so important, is that then you can start making the business case from business to business. And that's what we found is really helpful, because as so many people have said today, it's about that bridge, the language bridge, the communication. How can we get from early childhood to business? And the Business Task Force have been absolutely instrumental in that element.
Great. Hey, Gwen and/or Anna?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to answer this one. And we're going to talk about the CCE's Early Childhood Network. It emerged from the need to raise awareness in the private sector in Mexico about the importance of both early childhood and family-friendly policies. The CCE reached at first to us with Eva Fernandez, at the time manager of Early Childhood Social Investment at FEMSA Foundation. And as FEMSA Foundation is a corporate foundation working in early childhood development, we felt it was extremely important to raise awareness in the private sector about the significant opportunities business had to impact children. We know companies are full of fathers, mothers, grandfathers, and primary caregivers in their operations. In addition, we wanted them to see that influencing these issues was not only beneficial for their employees, as much business thought about that, but it also benefited the company. It has been proven that family-friendly policies like breastfeeding, extended paternity and maternity leaves, flexible hours, help reduce staff turnover and absenteeism, increase employee satisfaction and productivity. And the first companies that joined this CCE network were those that were aware of these causes and had already implemented certain support programs in their operations. Therefore, this seemed like a no-brainer to them, and they understood that what they were talking about. After this, an arduous communication process began, using these champion companies as an example, sensitizing decision makers and talking about our work. And that is how we started with 21 companies, and now we are having 71 companies in the network.
That's wonderful growth. So we're go on to the second question, which is, what are your business leaders doing now to support ECD, and what would you like them to do in the future? And I'm going to go Sarah first, and then Fuen or Ana, and then Gloria.
I think the honest answer to this, when we first brought our 8 businesses together, it took a bit of time for them. It did take a bit of time. They were scratching their head a little bit. They thought early childhood, and they initially, went quite quickly to what do we do as employers. And part of our work with the Business Task Force is really to expand that and provide a real breadth of ways that other businesses can get involved. But the other thing that they did, which we've also talked about today, is realize quite quickly that they had to make a business case. They had to take the early childhood language and neuroscience and, all the kind of brilliant stats that we all know so well and translate that, if you will, into a report which could land on the desk of any CEO. And as Deloitte were part of our Business Task Force, that was very helpful because obviously that's what they do best. And so they created that report, and that report did set out the business case. And then critically, it set out a framework for action. And we talk in the report about the different ways businesses, the different touch points businesses have, not just as employers, although that's obviously vital, but as providers of goods and services and as members of their local community and wider society, and the different ways that they can behave to have an impact. And then on top of that, we've identified 5 opportunities for impact, and they expand from supporting parents and caregivers to helping early childhood settings and social and emotional developments in there as well. So there's lots of different ways businesses can come at that. Securing basic essentials is one really important one, and IKEA took that on, for example, and really thought about it, worked very closely with an organisation in the UK called the Baby Bank Alliance, and really thought about how they could best be a partner to the Baby Bank Alliance, making sure families who are most in need have the basic essentials that they need for their young children. So lots of different ways. So breadth was something we really focused on, which I think is probably a bit different to some of the other brilliant examples that we're talking about on the panel today. What I want them to continue to do, I think, Sarah, that was the second part of the question. We are now really focused on impact and action and spotlighting good behaviour in order to inspire more businesses. And that was really inspiring for me to hear you've gone from 21 to 71, I think, something like that. Businesses in Mexico, that kind of growth is something that we also aspire to.
So are you using your current members to reach out to additional ones? Do you want to talk a little bit about your recruitment strategy?
So again, because of the way we work as an organization, because of the coverage we can get, part of what we see is kind of spotlighting good behavior. So we often rely on quite high profile public moments because we know that we can get that and get some attention. So we will probably create kind of, even if it's just one a year, a really public moment which brings lots of eyeballs on us, and then we recruit businesses in that way. And yeah, it's probably not as fast as I want it to be. I expect that everyone feels the same. But we have a lot of interesting conversations. We roadshow also around the UK, which isn't a big place, but making sure that we're looking in kind of regional hubs, having conversations with different businesses. And my favorite thing is when businesses arrive at these we call them round tables, and and they look really skeptical, and they're like, I don't know what this is about. I don't think this is for me. I don't know, early childhood. We're a construction firm. And then we connect them with other sector organizations in the room, or we talk to them about babies. I think in the previous panel, they were talking about, the power of talking about young children is that everyone's eyes can light up. So it's very powerful, those smaller events as well. But that's our kind of strategy because of who we are and the way we work. We have those kind of events, which will build to a kind of a national event later this year.
One of the things we'll talk about in our training institute later is how do you structure those events to get business to come and actually stay. And I can't tell you how many times I have been personally recruiting a business person and they'll say, I don't know anything about early childhood. And I'll say, great, I don't want you to know anything about early childhood. It's not a good use of your brain to know what the student-child ratio should be for babies, for example. You are an expert in the fact that I run a construction firm and I can't find 6 carpenters who can pass a drug test, show up at work every day. And this look of relief that comes over their face, that we are using you not as an early childhood expert, but as an expert in what you already do, is a great place to be.
Absolutely.
Great. Fuen and/or Anna.
I will answer this question. Well, we had identified 2 main strategies from the companies. First, probably similar what Sarah was saying, that is implemented family-friendly policies. So extended maternity and paternity leave, support to breastfeeding rooms or breastfeeding in general, investment in childcare services, and also like flexible work hours. But in the other side, they are also like looking for how to invest in communities in the rural area, for example. So now like some of the companies are in Mexico or some in Mexico City or some other cities that are already more developed in these topics. But there are also a lot of opportunities in the rural areas of Mexico and how to work with early childhood. So I think that are the 2 main investments that companies are doing right now. And also probably I would like more like in our network there are large companies. The majority of them are large companies, so we will love like more like medium-sized companies or small companies join this initiative, and yeah, like start there like more companies joining our network.
Yeah, one of the questions we had earlier was how do we get more small businesses involved? So if you might want to think about how are you trying to recruit small businesses, that would be really helpful to hear about that. So I'll give you a minute to think about that. So Gloria, we're going to you next.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The KEPSA Foundation was very instrumental in pushing the enactment of the Breast Milk Substitute Regulations and Control Bill 2011 as part of support for the better business practices for children. And when this act was passed, it became very, very instrumental in encouraging 6 months exclusive breastfeeding for children. And the bill was passed in the National Assembly in 2012. And this bill prohibits widespread promotion and advertisement of baby complementary food products in order to encourage breastfeeding as the superior way of feeding the infants. Next. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what businesses have done? They've
Go back one, Yvette. So go back one.
Okay, there was a business case. There was a business case when
This is also
companies started establishing lactation spaces. If you look at the on the left, there's Mabati Rollins, one of our champions opening a lactation room in the company. And this company has many other subsidiary companies, and all those subsidiary companies ensure that they have lactation spaces. As a foundation, we developed the inaugural private sector policy to secure workplace support for breastfeeding to provide guidance to private entities seeking to optimize better business practices for children. We also documented the business case studies on employer support for improved breastfeeding practices to showcase actually the best practices. We established a model lactation room in our offices at KEPSA, which also served as a learning center for other companies. This aimed to show how one could actually establish a modest center which didn't involve very high costs. And therefore, the smaller companies were able to see that you could establish a lactation space which was not very expensive. Under this, over 1,000 private sector companies were sensitized on BBPC, and 100 of them by 2022 established lactation spaces as a result of advocacy, with many others who are in various stages of implementation. I earlier said that we started by 27 companies committing to start these lactation spaces. And by 2022, we had over 100 private sector companies who had established the lactation spaces. Over 1,000 private sector companies were sensitized on the same. And I believe that the research we are doing now, we are going to find out that a lot more of the companies are having lactation spaces. 1,250,691 women were sensitized on maternal, infant, and young children nutrition. Next.
Gloria, I think this is for the third. Is this?
No, also it's for the third, as well as showing that there was a business case, and this actually made a case for most businesses to establish the lactation spaces. This is because it was proven that there was benefits to the employers as well as benefits to the employee. And this was as a result of when the young women came back from maternity leaves, there was a lot of retention as far as skills and experience because of satisfaction and self-esteem. When the young employees felt that the companies were working for them by providing these spaces, they felt they were proven to feel that they became more loyal to the companies. And there was also reduced absenteeism due to improved child and maternal health. And of course, therefore, the bottom line was increased productivity. So there was a business case to the employers.
Gloria, I know I also did some work with Private Sector Foundation Uganda, which is kind of similar to KEPSA. And what was so nice about their work and your work is that the business organization that has a very broad agenda, right? KEPSA, I'm sure, works on trade and roads and agriculture and energy, and they just incorporated this agenda along with all of their other really important business issues. And I think that's so impressive about your work. Do you know what, I don't know if you were there when it absolutely started, was it hard to get KEPSA to support this issue?
I don't think it was very difficult to have KEPSA support this issue, because we managed to sell the idea through all our platforms, explain, and having champions from the private sector leaders, the captains of industry. I think we've shared with you a report on how we develop champions within the big captains of industry. And these champions now became the face of the better business practices for children. People like Manu Chandaria, people like CEO for Toyota Kenya then, CEO for Safaricom. These are the people who took the center stage and went to establish these lactation spaces in their own companies. And therefore, it became a thing that if you wanted to do it well, please, the captains of industry are doing it, and so others followed. The other one was now to push this idea through the directorship during the board meetings, during the governance meetings, and also the way KEPSA is established. It is established through sectors and business management organizations. So at the touch of the key, we would be able to push our agenda through. So it wasn't very difficult. Less to say that some of our members were the ones who were probably manufacturing the infant formulas, but that was one or two, and we nevertheless we pushed the agenda, and also government took it up, and in 2017 there was the Health Act bill that was that became an act of parliament, and in that bill then lactation spaces were included, and therefore everybody followed suit, and it was the right thing to do. So it wasn't very, very difficult for KEPSA, because it was the champions were the captains of industry. And as well, we worked with the spouses. I worked with the spouses of the captains of industry. They were therefore, the spouses were able to push the agenda further where it was not that easy in terms of maybe securing budgets in the companies. So I believe that was tactical. And also we had a whole team of women CEOs who also supported this initiative. Thank you.
Right. Do you have another issue that you want to work on in the future? What would you like your business members to do in the future?
In the future, we would like the industry to keep championing this agenda so that most of the companies can avail this. We would also like, as members, to push for the Building Acts to be changed so that again, not only the private sector but also the public sector can help, so that all buildings maybe in the city can have that allocation of having mother spaces. And therefore, of course, that would be the creation of maximum child-friendly infrastructure in Kenya. We are trying to see how to engage the young champions, youth, to come in and say this is the right thing to do. We feel that if they also buy into the idea, it would help to go further than we have done. Of course, that pushing of the introduction of the new building codes, which the private sector should be able to do, that is something that we would like them to do. And expanding advocacy efforts among managers. If all HR practitioners in companies took this agenda at center stage, it would be pushed better, and it would actually be implemented in all companies. And definitely the promotion of the dissemination of the better business practices at the workplace, and especially making sure that that policy is complied with. Supporting income-generating activities to improve family livelihoods would also be another way of supporting better business practices for children, because some of the young mothers may be opt out of employment. So we are not talking about improving employability or upward push of young women in employment, but when they go into the businesses, then we would like this agenda also to get to be practiced in the informal sector. And therefore we have an agenda of ensuring that, of trying to ensure that the women who drop out of employment and go to business, or the women who actually are entrepreneurs, are also practicing better business practices for children. And then when we talk about the women out there, we are talking about nutrition, realizing that women are the primary determinants of what is eaten in every home. And that is for a fact. And I keep impressing about our captains of industry that what they eat in their homes, it is the women who make that decision. And if they make the right decision and give the children or the family balanced diets, then we are talking about improving the future work, the future workers, and therefore it will be more sustainable. So for now, I think that's what I can say.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so exciting. Advocacy to change public and private policies across big populations is such a powerful use of business influence. So thank you. So the last question I have, and then we'll see if there are any audience questions or questions of each other, or I have a couple more questions. So go ahead and put questions in the chat. We have a few minutes. Is what advice do you have for ECD leaders in starting their own business collaborations, even if they don't have a princess, even if they have to start small, recruiting one business person to work with them? So what advice would you have? And this time we'll go to Gwen or Anna, and then Gloria, and then Sarah.
Okay, I will say that in Mexico, Latin America, and I'm sure that in other continents as well, we're in the stage of measuring right now. So I think like right now it's really important and like to measure the business case or to have like these turnover rates of mothers or fathers after taking the maternity or paternity leave, or like all this data that is really important for other companies to understand like the importance of family-friendly policies and how they can impact on early childhood. So yes, also I know that Gwen wants to say something.
Thank you, Anna. I think it's also very important to know business that have a compromise with the early childhood or with the social programs, because if there are companies that are working with this, it's easier to start from there and then use this champion business as an example for others. Because like Sarah told before, it's difficult to start saying, do you want to invest in early childhood? And the company will say, I don't work for early childhood. So if we can bring some companies that already are working with them, but they are not from the sector of early childhood, it's a great win, I think.
There's a big difference between do you want to invest in early childhood versus do you want to invest in making sure your employees can show up to work today and that you have a workforce in the future. Okay, Gloria, we're going to you second.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's a question I've been asking the captains of industry lately, that if I showed up in their offices with 3 babies or 4 babies, ages 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or even with another one who is 1 year old, if I showed up in their offices, would they panic? And if they would panic, then there is something that they need to do in their companies. Because if they wouldn't panic, then it basically means there's a space they can show me to move in as they address my issues. So it's been one question that I've been asking a lot of companies. Are they providing a space where maybe a mother, when she's coming out from the clinic, or if something happens and they showed up in their offices, would there be a waiting room? Would there be a space where that child would feel comfortable? And if that would happen, then it means we are moving in the right agenda. So for me, my advice is this: let's take the young women in their reproductive stages holistically, even as they come to the office, because they hold the key to the future workforce. in the businesses we so dear hold in our hearts.
Sarah, over to you.
This is a hard one to come last. There's some very, very good points. And Gloria, I absolutely love the idea of showing up to people's offices with babies just as a great sales pitch as well, because who could not want to prioritize early childhood when they see what babies are like. But I think as well as everything that's just been said, one thing that one challenge that we got, rightly so, was we made the business case. I think we made that very clear. We showed examples, but there was still a bit of a so what do you want me to do? And making it very tangible and simple actions for businesses to take. And I think actually my partners on the panel have possibly done a better job of this than we've done so far. And I look at kind of Gloria's very clear request for mothers' rooms. And but making sure you know what you're asking for, but making it accessible as well. So not making it unobtainable. So giving a range of simple actions that businesses can take, and that they can take at different levels. So yes, some businesses might be ready to really push their parental policies. We've got some task force members giving 6 months full pay to both parents. But obviously for other businesses that we work with who employ shift workers, different patterns, what they do with their policies is very, very different. And actually just being able to create policy shift working patterns that means that grandparents can do pickups and drop-offs and things like that if they work in the same store as their children. There are things that they can do. They can think about it creatively. So providing tangible examples and tangible asks, which don't feel overwhelming, I think it is something that we've learned is really important in order to inspire action from business.
We have a couple of questions from the audience that I want to put to you, and I'll just articulate both of them and you can decide. So one is just, how do you start the conversation, and back to, how do you find the first people? Do you approach companies that you already know? And then the second one is the timing of approaching companies. Do you approach them at the very beginning when you're first starting out, or after you've done some preliminary work? Does anybody want to respond to either of those?
I think for us, Sarah, it was like we are like a corporate foundation. It was easy knowing what business had a compromise with early childhood. And so we got to them before anyone else, but we also came with some work made before. And that is how we reached this business that started with the network. And I think that it's important knowing them and having like maybe a director or human resources that is working with these family programs, and start talking with them to bring them and encourage them to talk about the importance of these programs in the business, and how they can also be a win-win position from the business and the children and the parents and the caregivers.
I'll mention a couple of things, and I'll also cover some of this in the session a little later on, some practical steps for getting started. So in terms of approaching companies, what I did when I was building Ready Nation was look for companies that I thought had a reason to care about these issues. They had a large female workforce. They needed a skilled workforce. In my case, energy or utility companies have been the best resource for me because they draw from a skilled workforce and they have very long planning horizons. You have to think 25 years in advance if you want to build new sources of power. So they tended to be good sources for me. Or chambers of commerce have been terrific sources of business leaders for me, and particular companies that join chambers that work on education through chambers of commerce. And virtually every country has, or many countries, I should say, have chambers of commerce or some version of that, like KEPSA or Private Sector Foundation Uganda. So And sometimes it's who knows this person, who knows this person, who knows this person that can just get your foot in the door. And then when do you do this? To me, there is a big difference between the small number of business people who are willing to work with you to build the organization versus people who are, once you've got the organization going, are willing to maybe come to a meeting or sign a letter or visit a politician, etc. So I, found a couple of people who had already started speaking about this, and got them involved and said, I need your help in building the organization, so that I can use your name to get in meetings with other people. I can have your advice on making sure that my communications are very business oriented, etc. And that may be only 1 or 2 or 3 people, and that's all you need. But then you can build from there to get the other people who are willing to at least consider invitations to take some kind of action. So I'm wondering if Sarah or Gloria has any other thoughts on.
Well, maybe to add on to that, as KEPSA Foundation, I realized that there was a great impact when we used for the SMEs, when we worked with Association for Women in Tourism in Kenya. They are our members, and the women in that association are SMEs, but they did a great job in influencing the hotel industry because they work hand in hand with the hotels or the hospitality institutions. They were able to influence a lot of big hotels to start the lactation spaces. So we worked with the Women Association in Tourism, and they were able to help us help the hotels establish the lactation spaces. So that is true. Working with the smaller business associations that have a lot of SMEs, when they have the knowledge and when they are able to see value in what we have asked them to do, then they are able to pass the word, as you rightfully say.
Great. Any other thoughts?
I think just to add to what you said already, Sarah, I think having those kind of founding members is what we see our task force, and then who are there to build it with us, and they have that kind of status that they're part of the beginning of it, but then they bring in their, whether it's bodies like you've talked about, Gloria, or whether it's the supply chain. For a lot of our businesses, it's about kind of using their contacts after that. I think that's really powerful. And just one other thing to add, which actually, Gloria, you reminded me of as well when you talked about spouses. Like we also, we'll target, if we know that early childhood is of interest to a business leader, we'll target that, even if we know they've, even if knowing they've just had kids or, things like that can actually be quite helpful, or knowing that they've got philanthropic interests in this space, which they can then transport to their business. There are, it sounds very basic, but it actually can be very helpful.
There's one more question. So your mention to the Chamber of Commerce reminds me to ask if there are any tensions that happen when working with a chamber that has already taken up advocacy for early childhood. If so, what did that look like? And I'm wondering if any of you have had that experience where I don't know, Gloria, if there's any other business group that's interested in children where you had to collaborate, or Gwen or Sarah, was that an issue for you at all?
No, I think when it comes to children issues, it hasn't been that difficult to impress upon industry to establish the lactation centers. And I think probably is the timing of when they start, when they establish. What we've realized is some were able to come in very fast. Others will tell us that we are going to do this in 1 year, we are going to do this in 2 years, we'll be doing this in 3 years according to their business plan. Otherwise, when it comes to establishment of the lactation spaces, as I said, it's in law now under the Health Act 2017. So it's really not something we can say it's for KEPSA Foundation or for KEPSA industry. It is something that is in law, and therefore complying involves everyone. And it is the right thing to do to provide mother spaces at the workplace.
In my experience working with chambers as an example of a multi-issue business group similar to many others, is that their agenda is so broad. You know, they like the agenda for KEPSA, it's about many different issues that affect the economic and social well-being of the city, of the country, that they welcome help to take on this. If they want to take on this issue, they need the help because they don't have expertise in this. And so one thing that I wondered if any of you might want to comment on, and then we'll close out if there are no more questions, is what is it like to staff the business people who are interested in this? And I'll use me as an example where I had two business people that was my champions when I was developing the group for the city of the District of Columbia, of the city of Washington, D.C. And one of them was so helpful in looking at every word of what I wrote to make sure that it spoke to business. And so that took a lot of time, went back and forth, many times in looking at communications to make sure that every word spoke to business. So I had to be prepared for the fact that it took time. But sometimes people think, oh, I will just send out a broad appeal to a group of business people and they will take this information and do good things, but they won't. Not without some help from people who have that expertise, like Sarah does, and Gloria and her staff, and Fuen and Anna. And that's a good thing, because you don't want them just running off and doing whatever they think is helpful, because they don't understand how complicated this world is. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about staffing your business leaders, any stories about providing the support they need to take some action.
I think, Sarah, it's a really good point, the time frame as well. Like, these things do not happen overnight, and they require a lot of stewardship, and the businesses we work with are big businesses. They do have teams. They have often teams who look after ESG, but it still takes time. And I think the other point is, we have to make this very easy and accessible in their language. I'm just repeating myself from what I'm saying, but to make sure that we understand, like, businesses have so many competing priorities, that we have to be a little bit humble as well in our approach, because businesses are having it tough, and I think that's a global situation, and there is a lot of competing priorities for business leaders, and actually we mustn't be deaf to that, because it will make us look a bit naive. So understanding that, yes, they might get it, they might love it, they might see the pitch, they might be embracing it and really wanting to work, but it will take time for them, particularly if they've got a board, they've got teams to deal with. So I that's not supposed to sound negative in any way, but I just think, just to be kind of realistic, that we are talking to people who may well get it, but they may have a lot of other things on their plate.
So yeah, when?
Yeah, from my end, I feel that when businesses are yearning to get to global competitiveness, we are reminded that you cannot get to global competitiveness unless you look at the key principles of responsible investment. And while looking at the key principles of responsible investment, then you have to look at the social impact of whatever you are doing, and involving participation of the vulnerable communities, involving participation of even children responsibly, in terms of, if you do a business and you advertise using children, if you do a business and you do child labor, then you would never get to global competitiveness. So we impress upon our businesses to look at some of these groups in societies, and they are, some of them are children, persons with disability, the vulnerable, the marginalized, as they do the businesses. So, and therefore they will have to tick the boxes on ESG and SDGs, and the Sustainable Development Goals. And therefore, this becomes very important to look at the social impacts of business. And for me, better business practices for children is one of those issues that we have to look at when we are doing businesses. And therefore, like my colleague has said, impressing upon business that they are doing the right thing when they are allocating small budgets to cater for children, to cater for vulnerable communities, and to cater for maybe persons with disability.
Before we close out, I wanted to add one more thought. So thank you, Gloria, for all of your wisdom. But before we close out, I wanted to add one more thought to the question about when do you approach a business. And this is, if there's one thought I want to leave you with, just in terms of practical advice, it's be prepared for success. When you work on getting a meeting with a business leader, you need to be prepared with your business case. You need to be prepared with your data. You need to be prepared with your messaging, and you need to be prepared to know what you want them to do. I think it's very usual in some sectors to feel like when you're meeting someone for the first time, you have a nice kind of get together, you learn about each other, and then you have a second meeting that maybe you move a little bit closer to what your ultimate goal is, and maybe the third meeting you actually sit down and talk about your goals. And again, this is somewhat different country to country, but be prepared with a meeting with a senior business leader for the process to go much faster. Because I have been in many, many situations where I'm talking to a business leader, I have a 15-minute appointment, and after 10 minutes, he says, I got it, I understand. What do you want me to do? And if I don't have an answer for him, I have just wasted his time, and it will be much harder to get to see him a second time. And so when you are thinking about when to approach a business leader, do it when you have your data, you have your message, and you have actions that you want them to take. So that if they do get it, if they do understand, and they want to move forward, you are ready to move when they are ready. I want to thank our panelists. You all have done such amazing work. We love to follow your work. If anyone else, again, we would love to promote examples of business partnerships, even if they are not as fully developed, even if they don't involve a princess, it's okay, on our website. So we'd love to know about any of you in the audience that have business partnerships that you would like us to showcase, so that you can also inspire others. So please send them our way, because we'd love to know about them. So thank you very much for a wonderful session. Let's see, Yvette, do we have takeaways? If not, that's okay for this session. And I think I will turn it over.
We do have takeaways if you want to. I know it doesn't cover everything, so feel free to add.
No, that's okay. So the one thing is that there are people who have walked this path ahead of you. And so if you want to start, and many of them started small. I started small with Ready Nation with, one business partner. There are people who have walked this path ahead of you that you can learn from. We can learn how to business leaders can be involved not only in changing their own policies for their own business, but also countrywide policies as well. And that this business involvement yields very tangible benefits for business leaders in ways that enhance their business. So thank you again for being part of our forum, and we will turn it over to Yvette for our next step.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So we are about to transition into a break, but before that, we want to be able to highlight another success story from El Salvador. It's called Fundamas, and it's a nonprofit that was established in 2000 with the goal of contributing to the sustainable economic and social development of El Salvador. Today, we're very honored to be able to bring to you to talk a little bit more about Fundamas, our friend and partner, Alfredo Fort. And Alfredo, just give me one moment. I'm going to share the slides. Second, sorry. Sorry, Alfredo, before we start, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that 10 minutes after the hour for Eastern time, that's 3:10, we will be starting part 3. It's called Turning Insights into Action, that has 3 sessions, building and sustaining ECD business partnerships, the practical steps for our taking action. Then we have our ECDAN hosted session. Our collaborating partner will be hosting innovative financing for ECD, unlocking business investment for early childhood development. And then we hope you stay to hear our closing and just having those final thoughts and takeaways. So. And Alfredo, I'll turn it to you to get started. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, and thank you very much for this opportunity and to highlight, as you were saying, Yvette, you know, one very amazing implementation of, you know, this thing that we have been discussing all day. How can businesses, you know, companies contribute to early childhood development? And El Salvador is an example. So that's the title. El Salvador is growing together. So just to say, over the last few years, El Salvador in Central America has been taking bold steps to transform areas such as education and the well-being of young children. This has been put into action through a national policy that was adopted only a few years ago in 2022 called Grow Together, in Spanish, Crecer Juntos. So the Grow Together policy is inspired by the Convention on the Rights of the Child and backed by the Constitution of the Republic, marking a turning point in the defense of children's rights in the country. You can start showing some of the, because we have a few pictures that were taken for, you know, of people there and actions there. So Grow Together is a holistic and intersectoral policy spanning across education, health, and child protection in El Salvador. It specifically addresses the needs of children in their earliest period from 0 to 7 years, recognizing the importance of this period for development. The Grow Together policy mandates that employers provide or contribute to the cost of childcare for their employees. So look at that very amazing proposition. One of the most significant innovations of this law was the creation of early childhood care centers, called in Spanish Centros de Atención a la Primera Infancia, called CAPI for short. So starting in March of this year, all companies with more than 100 employees, please, you know, put more pictures there. So companies that with more than 100 employees are being required to provide a child care benefit for the employees' children by opening child care centers or using common centers for multiple companies, or even to provide access to existing authorized child care centers. But later on, an amendment to the law allowed even companies to give money to parents so they themselves could pay for services they choose that are more convenient, even if they are not in the same municipality where the employee is working. More pictures. So when you can see there, you know, it's a CAPI, it says a CAPI, okay? So it's very important because it is even promoted by the First Lady, who has put lactation centers in many parts of the countries, of the country, including, you know, the airport and a number of places. So CAPI centers have specific requirements for the facilities and services offered to children and their families. The Business Foundation for Social Action in El Salvador, Fundemas, this company here at the back, Fundemas, which has years of experience in corporate social responsibility, has joined together with various organizations to provide training and technical assistance so that businesses can better understand, because all this was very new for businesses, to understand child development, and in order to support a child care benefit or establish their own child care centers or CAPIs for their employees. And you can see the next slide. Over 100 companies and institutions have attended child care workshops, offering practical tools to help them comply with that Grow Together policy that helps businesses to create their own action plans for implementation. In the next slide, you will see even an amazing, you know, one of those CAPIs having all those materials, right? And all the settings so that, you know, they can have all these young children. Trainings have also been held by Fundemas to provide technical standards for establishing, operating, and supervising CAPIs for businesses wishing to establish their own childcare centers, and ensuring that these centers meet what is called quality early childhood standards of care. So as of January of this year, El Salvador now has 31 certified CAPI centers, you know, from private businesses, with the goal to establish many more CAPIs throughout El Salvador and support the business community to fulfill this responsibility for this policy. Now, children with access to those CAPIs and other childcare options, we know have better chances of fully developing their cognitive, physical, social, and emotional skills. The next slide. And so companies, now they are adopting childcare initiatives that would benefit, and as we know, it will, you know, produce more satisfied employees, higher employee retention, stronger team cohesion, and lower employee turnover rates, as we know, when they are satisfied, potentially leading to increased, as we know, business efficiency and productivity from these employees, which, as we know, will, you know, produce an overall higher economic benefit, not only for companies, but for the country as a whole. This joint effort between the government and the private sector reflects the ways that coming together to help children to grow together can significantly benefit the commitment to comprehensive early childhood development. El Salvador views investing in early childhood not just as a responsibility, it is an opportunity to transform the future, since children are the seed, as we know, the seeds of a fairer, more equitable, and prosperous societies. So this is now my final chance of giving special thanks to Alexandra Rosales. She is a project coordinator at Fundemas, working to support businesses in their efforts to support children and families, and in providing this information, obviously, to CE International. So we just wanted to share this with you as an example of a very successful entrepreneurship with child interest at the center. Thank you very much for your opportunity.
Thanks so much, Alfredo, and forgive me for not introducing you properly.
That's right.
Alfredo is a public health physician. He's formerly senior staff with the World Health Organization and the United Nations. He's now a consultant for many international organizations, and he's a lecturer in the US and other countries on demography, reproductive health, maternal and child health, and development, and any other issues affecting positive global health and development. He's quite knowledgeable, experienced. We're very honored to have him a part of our network and to be able to share about Fundamas today. Alfredo, I know you're on your way to travel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much as well. Thanks.
Now, we're still in break, so I'm going to play a video for all of you that is actually, we just heard from Gloria from KEPSA. They have a documentary that is really worth seeing. If we're not able to play it in full, we will share it out. And so let me just get myself situated here. Share my screen again. You enjoy the documentary?
Odette, do you want to let people know what time?
So at home you have all the amenities. You can breastfeed, you can express your milk, you can store it. Then you come to the office and maybe you work 2 hours away from where you live. And then suddenly there's nowhere where you can do it.
Kenya Private Sector Alliance is the voice of the private sector in Kenya, and so brings all the sector associations and the corporates, from the multinationals to the very, very small ones, startups, together to speak in one voice on issues, policy and regulations, so that we can create an enabling business environment. KEPSA has an arm, which is the KEPSA Foundation, which is the social arm of trying to ensure that the private sector is also involved in the social issues of the country. So we do a lot of issues around youth, women, children, environment, where it concerns projects that the private sector needs to get involved in. Those are done under the foundation.
The Better Business Practices for Children, BBPC, is a project between UNICEF and the Kenya Private Sector, KEPSA. If a mother leaves home and comes to the office and stays for maybe 12 hours outside the house and they have not breastfed, sooner or later that milk diminishes and eventually dries up.
Working together with UNICEF and trying to meet the standards of the WHO on better business practices for children, that's when we thought of starting the initiative. And so that we can start encouraging our private sector to create lactation rooms so that women can be able to continue breastfeeding even as they work.
It was really difficult for me when I was pregnant and when I gave birth, because I literally had to fight the system. Breastfeed my children, make sure they're settled in well, and come back to do the evening bulletin. My managers didn't want me to do that. And I had to threaten to leave, because my choice would have been, can I be there for my children, or do I choose work? And it would have been an easy choice for me, hard financially, but easy emotionally and the right thing socially because my children need their mother.
You're not getting a child so that you can become a problematic employee. You're getting a child so that you can use this great work opportunity to provide for this child.
During my time, there were no lactation rooms in our workplaces. The maternity leave used to be 2 months, and then you forfeit your annual leave if you wanted to stay with your child longer. So the maximum time we had to actually breastfeed was 3 months.
We had a security event in one of the hotels that required a lady. And as she was on post, she disappeared for around an hour just to go and find her crying. And of course, the minute she walked out of the toilet, it cut me really, really deep in the heart because she had all this milk that was flowing from her blouse to her trouser, all the way to her shoes. That was a serious wake-up call.
It is not right. It is inhuman for an employer to send away a cadet because she's pregnant, because that is not the solution.
There's a way you are not settled. What room am I going to use today? The server room was an open room. Anyone could walk in and out. So what I used to do is to put my seat behind the door so that when you come and try to open, and it is a room that no one used to knock. So you will hit my seat, then I'll know someone and say, hello, I'm in here. Then they'll know I'm in there expressing my milk. That also interferes with your flow. And of course the dust, and of course the cold weather. If it's the restroom, the most embarrassing time is when I was actually putting the milk into the cup so that I'm able to put it in the fridge. And I don't know what I did when it was on the lap, it all spilled.
I think a lot of the times people feel like, hiyo ni shauri yake. Kwani who told her to get a baby, or whatever, that kind of mentality, or you're like, utajisort. And that's not the right outlook to have.
If you do optimal breastfeeding, then you're likely to save about 823,000 children every year if that is promoted. Breastfeeding also happens to be one of the high impact interventions that can save lives of children under 5 years.
The issues of breastfeeding, Kenya is one of the countries that has put in place several actions. We started by ensuring that a mother can take maternity leave for 30 days and then add the annual leave, and they're able to stay with the baby for about 5.5 months.
A few years back, one of the directors of KEPSA, Gloria Decay, said, I'd like you to be a champion for this breastfeeding program. We would like to see that this continues in not one, but as many companies as possible.
Try and find some way, even if it's a small corner to start with, and say, you know what, guys, I'm really sorry we don't have a room yet, but use this area for now as we work towards it, but don't ignore it altogether.
And so it's important for the private sector to create those environments where mothers feel safe and also feel that they're contributing, they are not denying their children breastfeed milk.
I think why it's very important is because every individual who then is your staff member comes as a whole person, does not just bring their professional life to you. For the private sector, even the public sector that have taken up workplace support for breastfeeding, that is a great way to support the workforce.
Welcome to the Isuzu East Africa Lactation Room. Any corporate that is not doing this, they are missing a great opportunity to increase their engagement score of employees at the workplace. So I would encourage, if there are any corporate out there that is not yet established a lactation room or created an environment for all employees to feel okay at work, that the system, the infrastructure is supporting them to do their work as well as balance the much needed balance for both family and work, then they're missing a great opportunity.
The nursing room. Oh, yes. As my child is still on exclusive breastfeeding, so being able to have a place they can go and express, and then have a fridge. There's also a fridge. They don't mention it there, but there's a fridge that you can actually store your breast milk and then take it later when you're going home. So it's still fresh by the time you're taking it home to the child, and the child can have it the following day. And coming to work and being able to work for an employer who recognizes the need to just give you extra support really helps me feel appreciated. It also helps me when I come back to want to give more.
Wananipea nafasi na nyumba fulani niende nikamue maziwa niweke kwa fridge, ikifika jioni naenda napelekea mtoto.
What that means for you as an employer in the long run is that you're more likely to retain that employee compared to someone who doesn't have those facilities in place.
When you're recruiting employees and your employee knows that my employer cares about me, it's a very good thing for any company. When I didn't have a room, I just did the expressing for 6 months. And so after 6 months, I introduced any other milk that I felt I deemed right for the baby. But when I had this room, I expressed up to 10 months. Can you imagine the benefits of the child who is doing 10 months still on my milk, and the child who did only 6 months and had to introduce another kind of milk?
We're encouraging all private sector, but also public sector, and working very closely with the Ministry of Health for them to encourage the public sector to do the same, because then it improves productivity of the whole country, and also encourages mothers to be able to work and stay up to work than quit during their motherhood seasons. Because they want to give their best to their children, so that it's a win-win and they can do both.
All we're saying is, can you consider a room where this woman can be able to express her milk? Because her doing it in her parked car is not dignity. It's unfair. A room is all we ask for.
So you have a responsibility as companies to take this seriously. And I commend any companies that take on board initiatives that make it easier for mothers to access their children and ensure that they get breast milk as opposed to alternative milks.
If you're an enlightened employer, why don't you do it? Because it will add a tremendous amount of value of your company, not only company to your clients, but amongst your people, amongst your staff.
For the companies that have taken up setting up the lactation centers under the Better Business Practices for Children, thank you very much. And we encourage you to continue to talk about it, to encourage other companies to take up the initiative, and also to share your stories, how it has benefited your companies and the welfare of the mothers and the children.